are Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, Magic, Stockton, Curry, Isaiah, and Chris Paul. Those are the five best. But Magic, one team. Curry, one team. Stockton, one team. Isaiah, one team. Chris Paul, several. This is his fifth team. And this is where mobility can kind of mess up your legacy. And I think it's hurt Chris Paul's legacy. Point guards or quarterbacks. We don't mind them going to a second team. We don't want them bouncing around the league. It made Brett Favre look needy going to the Vikings and the Jets. It's hard to sell to a basketball fan to appreciate his greatness. So the way I always explain Chris Paul is when he arrives, bad teams suddenly get good. Oklahoma City was tanking. Phoenix was a mess. And when he leaves, all-star level players often disappear. DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin. In sports, we like simpler arguments. Good guys, bad guys. Star, bust. Great player, bad player. Chris Paul's more complex than that. He goes to bad teams, makes them playoff teams, and then people go, well, I mean, he doesn't win championships. Championships? It was a dumpster fire when he got here. He got him into the playoffs. Well, I don't win championships like Magic. Yeah, Magic inherited Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yes, Isaiah had a Hall of Fame coach, Chuck Daly. You look at all those other point guards. Just Stockton had Jerry Sloan. Isaiah had Chuck Daly. Magic had a Hall of Fame coach. Curry's got a Hall of Fame coach. And Chris Paul's had a lot of different coaches. Some good and some not so good, many fired. And his legacy is complex because of that. But when he shows up, he makes mediocre special. And when he leaves, special disappears into the ether. Remember how much we used to talk about Blake Griffin? He was like KD now. He was on every show. And when you talk about the top 5 point guards of all time, this weekend, Chris Paul, at 37 years old, had 30 points and 10 assists. And Phoenix is the best team in the league. And here's an interesting stat from Tom Haberstroh. Here are Chris Paul's fourth quarter stats in the playoffs. Since the Rockets traded Chris, it was at a time called the worst trade ever, remember? They traded Chris from Houston to OKC. And since he's been at OKC and Phoenix, his fourth quarter stats, he shoots 56% from the field, 54% from three, and 89% free throws. And he's turning 37 in 3 weeks. Wow. But again, it's complicated. It's not a nice, happy ending. The good guy doesn't always win a championship. It's messy. It's layered. It's nuanced. I always laugh at this guy doesn't have any championships. Yeah, he didn't inherit Kareem or have a Hall of Fame head coach at every stop. And he had to bounce around because, let's be honest about this league. Even Jordan ended up with the Wizards. LeBron has bounced around. A lot of the smarter players have bounced around to find the best fit for them. But when he got to Oklahoma City, they were tanking. And when he got to Phoenix, they had been a mess. A talented mess, but a mess for a decade. And now they are and should be favored to win it all. And his Game 1 performance was typical CP3. Here's Joy Taylor with the news. Of the NBA lost yesterday to Boston. And, Kyrie Irving's flipping fans off and all that stuff. It is really the perfect encapsulation of Kyrie Irving this weekend. He's an otherworld talent. He's a freak. I mean, he's the best small finisher I've ever seen in my life. I've been watching the NBA since the early 70s. He lets fans get into his head despite the fact he wants to be the villain, and then he tried to justify it after. That's all you need to know about Kyrie Irving. But what we have in this series is really two different basketball cultures. If it was a movie, Boston would be Hoosiers if those guys in the movie could play. Defense, intensity, they care, there's chemistry, they've got a star player, they make sure there's ball screens. They're always trying to get Tatum loose. They've got guys that overachieved in the draft. They're good for basketball. The Nets, if they were a movie, they'd be Boiler Room. Let's make some money and leave somebody else to deal with our mess. It's ego. Defense is optional. I'm not even sure if they have plays. Kyrie Irving and KD, it's just like, get a bucket. I'm not sure they're particularly well coached. I'm not sure they want plays. As you know, though, I tend to like tire fires. So Boston is good. Boston winning is good for basketball. So was Hoosiers. And Brooklyn is good for drama. And I can't take my eyes off them. Everything about Boston, last couple of seconds, even the final play, passing and teamwork and unselfish. But when, it's interesting. When KD left the Warriors, he wasn't just leaving Steph. He was leaving kind of the LA Rams of the NBA, a really smart GM and a really smart coach and a really smart culture. And there was accountability. And you could go there to rehab your image. And like Steph Curry, he's a guy that doesn't even have to start over the weekend. He didn't just leave a player. He left a culture. And Brooklyn is the opposite of the Warriors. Chemistry, defense, accountability, And I find myself watching KD and Kyrie and thinking they're succeeding despite themselves. And I'm not even sure if they're succeeding, because if they get bounced in this round, that's a massive disappointment. And I like watching them play. But, when you choose to be a villain, LeBron he didn't even really mean to. Like he gave $1 million to a boys and girls club when he had that big decision. It was clumsy. He didn't want to be a villain. But after a year of being the villain, LeBron's like, I don't like being a villain. I don't like this. Kyrie and KD have chosen to be the villain, and they don't like the shrapnel and the pitfalls of it. You're going to get heckled. People are going to be on you. KD's sensitive. We know that. Kyrie hears everything. We know that. And he reacts to everything. So if you choose that path in life to agitate, shocking. You're going to get hecklers. Nobody was heckling Jordan and the Bulls. Nobody heckles the Suns. Nobody's heckling Milwaukee. They just ignore it. They're not trying to agitate people. So here was Kyrie and a Shaq after.
Where I'm from, I'm used to all these antics and people being close nearby. It's nothing new when I come into this building, what it's going to be like, but it's the same energy they have for me. And I'm going to have the same energy for them. Somebody's going to call me out of my name. I'm going to look at them straight in the eye and see if they really about it. Most of the time, they're not.
I don't really want to hear all that. And, certain cities, they don't care what you say at the press conference. You know what's going to happen in game 2? They're going to be talking more smack up there in Boston. I played in Boston 2 years, but listen, it happens to the best of us. You don't think people said stuff to Charles Barkley, said stuff to Akeem Olajuwon myself?
Come on, man. Please stop, man.
Well, Charles Barkley, by the way, was an agitator. So I still like Brooklyn in the series. I'm probably out of my gourd. But when you choose a path in life, you got to deal with the pratfalls of it. So now let's talk about the team KD left, the Warriors. And I just referenced this. They're the LA Rams of the NBA. Really smart GM, really smart coach, awesome culture. They always seem to find money that nobody else has. They draft and develop really well. And they make odd players and weird players and old players all fit. This Warriors team gives you the full range of their culture. Let's start with Andrew Wiggins. People are like, he wasn't a bust, but he was a big underachiever. What do you do with Andrew Wiggins? He goes to the Warriors. He just made his first All-Star team. He's become hyper efficient. He's one of the league's most efficient players now. He's a wonderful fit. Then there's old Draymond Green. He gets hurt a little. Is he past his prime? Is he worth the money? Seems like to me he's the best defensive player in the league. He's reestablished his brand. How about Jordan Poole? Classic Warriors. 28th pick. He wasn't a one-and-done guy. Nobody thought he'd ever be a lottery player. And look at him this year. He is emerging as one of the league's brightest young stars. And there's Klay Thompson. 2 ugly injuries, missed 2 years, comes back, hard work, rehabs, here he is. And by the way, Jordan Poole is about ready to take all their jobs, and he loves him. And then there's Steph, cherry on top Steph. See what Steph did this weekend? I've been injured. I don't need to start. I'll come off the bench. Oh, excuse me? When that was suggested to Russell Westbrook, he was outraged by it. When Melo, way past his prime, when it was suggested he comes off the bench, didn't know what to do with it. Steph Curry's like a 2-time MVP, 3 titles. He's like, I've been injured. Jordan Poole's playing great. This Warrior team is the full collection, the full range of what they are. A draft and develop guy, an old tough guy who reestablishes his brand, a guy off an injury, Steph Curry stepping back and being unselfish, the emerging star in Jordan Poole. They put in the death lineup yesterday where it's like nobody's over 6'6". They run up and down the floor, and Jokic looked exhausted at that game over the weekend. But I like what they stand for. And what's interesting, so this Jordan Poole kid is really good, really fast, and watch out. And if you're Klay Thompson, you could be saying, who's this kid over my shoulder? Like, they're not paying him anything. He could take my job. And yet, after the win, here's Klay on Jordan Poole.
Well, I mean, Jordan Poole, wow, what a playoff debut. I mean, all his hard work is paying off. If he doesn't get most improved this year, it just doesn't make any sense. Without him, we would not be where we're at. So, Dub Nation, we should be very grateful for Jordan's development and the type of player he's become, because